A very good day to you and welcome to Crosspoint, presented by the National Christian Council of Sri Lanka. In this episode, we will be talking about child development and also the protection and care of the children. So we have Mrs. Sohan Fernando, who is a consultant on child protection and is also a social worker. A warm welcome to you, Mrs. Fernando.
Thank you, Dilshan. I'm happy to be here.
So, my first question, since we are talking about child development and also the protection and care of the children, my first question is regarding child development. So, we have orphanages and child care institutions that have been in existence for many years here in Sri Lanka, and also the children are kept safe and also they are given the basic needs such as good education and also food and shelter. So, what is the need for reintegration?
The need for reintegration is great, and I'll tell you why. You're right, in Sri Lanka, childcare institutions have been there for many years, over centuries actually, starting from the mid 19th century, and formalized care from the 1940s. When you take our institutions, we have 379 childcare institutions in the country, approximately 10,632 children living in these institutions. Yes, they do get their basic needs met for the majority. I mean, we're not talking, we can't say that for every single one of them, but the majority of these children do get some form of their basic needs met, and education as well. However, is that all a child needs? You know, when you talk about a child, from the child's birth, actually before birth, through infancy, through all the stages of a child's development, science, research, we know that children need much more than what you mentioned. They need the loving, nurturing of a like a caregiver. It can be a mother, a father, any caregiver, individualized one-on-one attention. And I'm afraid that is not possible in a childcare institution for the simple reason that we have a large volume of children with very few caregivers. So we're looking at some CCIs, I'll say CCIs from this point onwards, which is childcare institutions. Many have about 30 to 40 children, one caregiver to 30 to 40 children, which is a large volume of children. And as you can imagine, you know, if you ask any parent who has one child or two children, they will say it's very hard to raise a child. And so can you imagine how it must be like for children growing up in these institutions? They don't get that warmth, that loving care, the holding of them, the touching, like we're looking at infants lying in cribs for days because they don't have enough hands to hold them. It boils down to that. And so, yes, it's true that they do get the basic needs met. No, they don't get what they absolutely need, which is that nurturing care. So that's why we need to reintegrate these children back to family, be it their own. If they have a biological parent or parents, first choice is that, as long as the home is safe. If not, are there any relatives that can take the child? That's called kinship care, or do we have any other options? So that is why there is a great need for reintegration.
Well, I can see that it's a really tough task in these institutions, say just a few people taking care of many children. So, my second question is regarding the alternate care policy. The government may put pressure on existing CCIs to close down and discourage new ones from being established. So, where will the children go if they need care and protection, but they have no one?
The government of Sri Lanka is indeed moving towards reintegration, reunification, and moving towards family-based care. Basically, we're lining up to international treaties. We are signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child. In 1990, we were signatory to this. And we're also in line with the global movement that is pushing for family-based care and community, arming communities, strengthening families to be able to take care of their children. So it's indeed a good thing. And of course, it is not about the shutting down of all 379 children's homes, which is an impossible task. It is looking at who actually needs to stay, like for safety reasons, if a child needs a place to stay temporarily, or does the child and his or her family need strengthening? Because, Dilshan, the number one reason for institutionalized care in Sri Lanka is not for safety reasons, believe it or not. It is because of poverty and dysfunctional families. And so some argue children need places of safety. It's correct, but that's not the main reason for institutionalization in Sri Lanka. It's poverty. And so therefore, the government is looking at why can't we strengthen families, give them what they need, be it sustainable living measures, be it financial support, some are mentoring, counseling, whatever they need to be able to take care of their own children. So this is where we're headed. And so when we talk about the care and protection, yes, they need some form of care, but does it have to be within the walls of an institution, away from home? Does it really have to be moving a child out of his or her parental care? So these are the questions that we're talking about, and the country is heading that way, which is a really important thing. I just have to mention, because not only global research, but research from Sri Lanka as well clearly indicate that children who are institutionalized have a high prevalence of mental illness, dysfunctionalities, dysfunctional behavior, and have a potential, like a capacity, some of them, for criminalized behaviors. So are we really enabling the problem? We need to be the solution. And so that is why we are having this movement towards helping children find loving, caring families.
Adding to what you said, I think that's the main reason what you mentioned is regarding poverty. But I think there's also the domestic violence that is taking place on a consistent basis inside the families, between their parents especially. So that's why you mentioned that children need more than just a care within an organization or institution. So my third question is regarding family strengthening. And when it comes to something community-based, families come to faith-based institutions asking for placement for their children in childcare institutions. So because, as you said, they are unable to provide for their children. What do we do? I mean, how can we turn a blind eye to them?
Very interesting question, Dilshan. And families do come. They do come to faith-based institutions. They come to government institutions. They come with their needs. So one thing we really have to look at, do these children need to be separated in order to survive? Or can they be armed with supports in the community? So we're looking at necessity. Under the UN alternative care guidelines, we look at, is it necessary to remove a child of its parental care? And then we answer the second question, suitability. What placement is suitable for the child in his or her best interests? So we really need to start thinking on those lines. Is it necessary? Is it suitable? And then you talked about turning a blind eye. A very interesting question. For me, in my perspective, turning a blind eye would be turning a blind eye to where the country is trying to go to. The government is trying to go to a place where we want children to thrive in families. And so I would say turning a blind eye could mean that too, that we turn a blind eye and say institutions have run for centuries, that they have been in existence, we provided for their needs, so why do we have to go in that direction? That to me is also turning a blind eye. Also, we have to look at safety. A lot of people say we need institutions because it's a safe environment. Is it really safe? We have to look at that as well. When we look at one caregiver to 30-40 children, how can that one caregiver look and cover and take care of the safety and care needs of all these children? It's a high risk situation, right? And we have data, global data to show that there are abuses and neglect all happening. It doesn't need to be intentional, but the fact of the matter is human capacity isn't there to care for children within institutions. And so we have to really look at that. And when we talk about family strengthening, to upkeep an institution, a considerable amount of resources go. We're talking about financial resources like salaries of staff, resources, basic needs, their education. A lot of resources go to upkeep a home, right? An institution. Why not move that to family strengthening, to preserve families, family preservation? You talked about domestic violence. It's a reality. Domestic violence, we have a high prevalence of in Sri Lanka. So what if the community resources go into helping parents manage their life, help with marriages, help with parenting, help arm them with education, give them the support they need to be responsible for their own children? What would that what would that look like? So we need to really start thinking on those lines. Are we now really going against what the government, what professionals, what the researchers are saying? We're separating children from their families. How good is that? I just want to say, back then when they first began institutionalized care, there was a tremendous need. And even in the recent years, there was a need. We came out of a war, we had war going on, we had a tsunami, we had children that needed that care, they needed somewhere to go. Now, we have to think about what can we do for the community, what can we do for the families, because we're raising children in these institutions that are developmentally delayed. Not everyone, but we are having that issue. We have mental illness, dysfunctionality. So why not come together as professionals, sit together, and instead of becoming the problem, be the solution? So
Well, that's really great. I mean, we need to think about these children rather than turning a blind eye to them. So, Mrs. Fernando, do you have anything to share with our viewers, especially regarding childcare, how to protect and take care of a child, and also how to develop a child, especially that has been through tough times like we discussed here?
Dilshan, that question might take me a lot of hours to discuss, but because it's that important, your question, I would say first step is we need to start listening, because wherever we go, a child is trying to say something. Actually, I would venture to say, if we are running a children's home, if our institutions, if our faith-based entities are actually resourcing a children's home, I really urge everyone in charge to actually spend time with those children. You have to be able to go to them to hear the reality, because children do start speaking and they will tell you that living in the confines of an institution is not where they want to be. They're crying out for help. They are desperate for love and warmth. They need someone to listen to. They need family. Children need family, and without a doubt, the majority of us believe that. I think we need to come together. We need to come together as stakeholders. Yes, we might firmly believe that children's homes are needed and are the way to go, but it's an opportunity to hear each other out and to understand that children they don't have a way to communicate that. So I urge anyone who's interested in this field to get in touch with what's going on, because it's no longer a problem that we can hide, it's reality. So we can have another discussion maybe on that question at a later date, but I hope I answered your question.
Yes, indeed. So it has been a really good discussion about a topic which is very important, especially in today's world where many children are not getting the protection and care that they really need. So thank you very much, Mrs. Sohan Fernando, for joining us for this discussion. And so that's all for this episode of Crosspoint. So join us again for another interesting and informative discussion about a vital topic on Crosspoint. So this was presented by the National Christian Council of Sri Lanka. So until next time, take care and God bless you.